so hard to get through. I need a break. Where's my wand? Oh, here it is. Okay. I need to get a little rest. Let me go to the spa. Alika, take me to the spa. A little rough landing, but I'm here. Isn't a spa? It's a graveyard full of ghosts. Still more lively than the book I just had to read. Hello, my lovelies. I am author Madam Crystal Butterfly. And today, my lovelies, I will be discussing with all of you The Misses by E.L. James. Now, my lovelies, normally at this time I would do a whole author section and tell you more about this author, but I'm not going to do that with this video. The reason being is, I'll be honest with you, I should have not read The Misses. You see, I read E.L. James's book the prequel book to The Misses, The Mister. And it was not fun for me to read. It was painful for me to read. And I told myself, well, if it was painful for me to read, then don't read any more of her books. Books are supposed to be fun, not a chore. But I was curious about a few things that the book didn't tell, like the male love interest in the book, whose name is Maxim Trevelyan. He inherited this position of Earl from his older brother because his older brother committed suicide, and it was like, why did his brother commit suicide? Does James tell us why? And I was also curious if the sex trafficking ring that the female lead Alessia was kidnapped by, were they completely out of commission? Did they have some stragglers? Because I believe they arrested all the sex trafficking people in the first book. I'm not sure because I don't want to read the first book again. And The Misses is a lot more forgettable as a story, and I'll explain why later in this review. But give me a moment also to get a little deeper into why I decided to read The Misses after I did not enjoy The Mister. Despite being, in my opinion, not a fun book, The Mister had a lot of interesting ideas, such as the mystery surrounding why Maxim's brother committed suicide. I figured since James created so many interesting ideas, as she writes more, she would become a better writer. I also believed this because, as an author myself, with each book that I write, I improve as a writer. I have also read many other authors who, with every book they have written, they also improve at their craft. But I did go into The Misses with lower expectations just because I did not enjoy The Mister. After reading The Misses, I feel that this book was worse than The Mister. It felt very torturous to read this story because reading it felt like being locked in an empty room for hours and not even having the benefit of watching paint dry, because in this story, nothing happens. The time is almost here to raise the curtain and have all the players come to the stage to expose a long-hidden truth. Wedded Bliss, coming soon. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Before I tell you more about my horrible experience with this book, let me tell you what this story is supposed to be about. Maxim Trevelyan, reluctant Earl of Treverford, has pursued the woman he loves to the wilds of Albania. Having fought for and won her, he now has to wed her at the sharp end of a shotgun. But can this reformed rake like Maxim ever make a good husband? Or will his own notorious reputation and the scandalous secrets of his aristocratic family destroy his newfound happiness? Alessia Dimachi has defied and outwitted kidnappers and traffickers and won the heart of the man she loves, but can she make this marriage work? Confronted by Maxim's lurid past, his forbidding family, and the looks and whispers of London's elite, will she ever be seen as Maxim's countess, or will she always be his former cleaner? From the majestic mountains of Albania through the rural idyll of the English countryside to the shady glamour of contemporary London, The Missus is a spellbinding journey of love, longing, acceptance, and redemption. Stories need drama. They need conflict. Without them, there's no story, because without the conflict, your readers will get bored and walk away. And if you start a little conflict, you shouldn't stretch it out too long, but at the same time, you shouldn't make it really, really short either. When the story opens, Maxim is dreaming of seeing his late brother Kit in his casket, only to later see himself in the casket. When Maxim wakes up, he takes the dream as a sign that his brother is trying to tell him that he will do a great job as Earl, and that bit of encouragement makes him feel more confident. I was bamboozled by this scene in the story because I don't see how a dream of you seeing yourself in a coffin after seeing your sibling in a coffin is a sign of encouragement. It felt more like a sign that this job may kill you. It didn't feel like encouragement, and saying it was encouragement was just odd to me. In The Mister, Maxim felt a lot of pressure from going from the responsibility of having to do absolutely nothing to having the responsibility of being an Earl. Since The Missus begins shortly after the end of The Mister, and Maxim has not been an Earl for long, I don't know why James didn't use this to capitalize on Maxim's anxiety of being the Earl while entering into marriage with Alessia, and considering how the responsibilities would immediately affect her when he saw his brother in a coffin only to be replaced by himself in his dream. Even giving him the worry that Alessia would end up in a coffin as well because of what this job may have done to his brother would have been a better plot point in my opinion. But that is just how I feel James should have taken this scene in her story. Also, my lovelies, if you are hoping that as we get deeper into this story that the plot is going to get deep and eventful, I'm sorry, but this is a story about pretty much nothing interesting happening. There are going to be several threads like this one where you will think at first this is going to lead to something interesting. So I'm just going to tell you right now, abandon all hope of that happening in this story. Okay, just like in The Mister, I've been tearing down Maxim quite a bit, so time to leave him alone and rip apart the rest of the story. The point of Alessia's character is that she is a young woman who was trafficked, but she escaped her captors before they could sell her, and then she later ends up in a horny relationship with a new Earl, which fixes him because before he met her, he was sleeping with any pretty woman he saw. I am going to talk to all of you more about the fact that this woman was almost sold into sex slavery and this being a smut book later in the review. In the story, there is a woman named Caroline who was Maxim's late brother's wife. Caroline and Maxim were once lovers before she got with his brother, and they hooked up
shortly after his brother's funeral. Now, during the time Caroline was with Maxim's brother, she did not have an affair with Maxim, and she was not romantically involved with him. The problem with Caroline right now is that the story is hinting that she wants to get back with Maxim now that her husband's gone, and she always did have some kind of feelings for him, but he's getting married, so naturally she's jealous. And in one scene where she's drinking with Alessia and Maxim's sister, she feels the need to tell Alessia how much of a huge slut Maxim was. A little bit later in the story, to try to mess with Alessia, she does tell Alessia about how she's going to have all these responsibilities as the Duchess once she marries Maxim, and that's going to be a lot of pressure. To make matters worse, Alessia's ex-fiance shows up to beg her to take him back. This is the same man who in the previous book dragged this woman across Europe to get her back to Albania to force her to marry him. Sometimes he pointed a gun at her and he shoved her into a trunk. Anyway, my lovelies, he gives her a speech of how marrying Maxim is a mistake and she will never fit in England and she'll only be happy in Albania with him. After she understandably throws his sorry butt out, everything he said, along with other plot points I mentioned, pretty much go nowhere because, as I've said, this book is about nothing. This author, I feel, could have used a lot of this to build a much better story, like Alessia suffering from PTSD after what happened with her and her ex and being trafficked, along with anxiety of her new role as Duchess. Maxim's past could add to that drama for the couple, and any expectations you have gained from me saying that, please drop them. There are moments in the story where Maxim's past is brought up and it seems to bother her, but it dissipates as quickly as it's brought up. This doesn't really create any drama in the story. So having any expectations that there's going to be some drama, there's going to be some controversy that gets serious or anything like that is a huge waste of your time if you read this book. Anyone who says fairy tales ain't for grown folk really needs to get out more. Curse of the Frog Prince, parts 1 and 2. Available now on Amazon Books.
Human trafficking is something very bad. It's not funny. It is a very serious issue. Now, if you wish to have the issue of human trafficking as a part of an erotic story, you can. But if you're going to do something like that, you need to take account the person's PTSD and what they went through so that you can write a more compelling character, and so in many cases the sex scenes aren't uncomfortable. But it is not a good idea to completely ignore the fact that this happened to the character and not show them going through the motions of overcoming their trauma. Because otherwise you have nothing but a flat story and you treat something very serious like it's just a one-note thing. Just dust your shoulders off, you'll be fine.
I want to take this moment to point out that The Missus, like the rest of James's books, is erotica. And there's nothing wrong with being a smut writer, but there is something wrong with not focusing on that part of the story. As I have said in the past, I am usually hard on romance because most romantic books that I have read only focus on the sex, and the writer does not work very hard to develop the rest of the plot points in the story. The Missus suffers from not properly developing most of the plot points in the story to make them a bit more scandalous and bring in some drama, and the story also does not do a good job of focusing on the sex scenes. There are only a few scenes where the couple is intimate with each other, and they are extremely forgettable. Also, Alessia was trafficked and almost sold into sex slavery. For the most part, the story seems to ignore this fact, and it has not been a long time since this happened to her. A better example of an author dealing with a character who had to deal with sexual assault can be seen in a story called The Dragon's Bride by Earl Grey Tea. If you are interested in ever reading this story, you can find it on a story app called Episode. Okay, The Dragon's Bride is about a young woman attempting to find her family. And it's a romantic story of how one night when this woman who, as I said, she's attempting to figure out what happens to her family, but she decides to go out with some friends and have a little fun. But she also does odd jobs for people. So while she's out with her friends, she goes to do an odd job for somebody. They have her read some weird book and she gets transported to another world and discovers that now she is the new Dragon Bride. While dealing with the issue of becoming the Dragon Bride, later in the story, she discovers what happened to her parents. She learns that her mother had actually been held hostage and repeatedly raped by a man trying to force her mother to get pregnant. If you want to know why this sicko did that, then I suggest that you download Episode and read The Dragon's Bride. It's a fairly interesting story and I can't recommend it enough. Her mother escapes from this horrible person, but she's injured and some people find her. One of the people that discovers her mother is her father, but when they meet, her mother does not jump into this man's arms upon meeting him. She was sexually abused by someone and beaten. She is not going to be chasing after the first pretty boy she sees. And that story reflects her dealing with her trauma as they get to know each other, and eventually she learns to trust him. Then they fall in love, and as you can guess, she gives birth to the main character. This story is better because this author is not ignoring what happened to her character's mother. She's showing how this can psychologically damage a person, and it may take a while for that person, if they can, redevelop the ability to trust, especially when it comes to the opposite sex, if that's the person that hurt them, which does create a much more compelling character, something I do not feel James is capable of writing.
Alright, my lovelies, normally this would be time to rate a story, but this time I'm doing something a little different. You see, when it comes to The Misses by E.L. James, I am not going to give it a rating. I grabbed this book knowing that I am not a fan of this author. I did hope that her writing would improve, but to me, I personally do not feel like she's capable of improving as a writer. She seems to have her own thing that she's determined to stick to. So it's not fair for me to go and rate a book by an author I know I'm not a big fan of. It just feels like I'd just be picking on her at that point. I already know I don't like her writing style, so I shouldn't be making fun of or picking on her for it if I'm intentionally grabbing her book out of curiosity, knowing I'm not a big fan of her work. So she's getting no butterfly score today because it's not fair to give her a poor score when I knew I didn't like her work, and I most likely would not, when I knew I most likely would not like her work going into this video and going into me reading it, really. Alright, my lovelies, I just want to explain this real quick. I am a reviewer. My job is to read a book and give you my opinion on it. It is not to tell you what to do. If you saw this review and you're curious about the work of E.L. James and you want to read the Mrs. and the Mr., then go ahead. That is your right. You need to do what's right for you. If this type of thing is what you're into and you like this type of story written this way, then have fun. I'm not going to tell you to read it, and I'm not going to tell you not to read it, because that's not my job. It's my job to introduce you to a work and tell you my opinion on it only. Whether or not you read a book is 100% your decision, and you have to use your brain about whether or not you want to read it. Is it your thing? Is it not your thing? As long as it's what you want to do, it's okay with me. All right, my lovelies, real quick, before I go, YouTube has been doing this thing where they've been unsubscribing people. I think it started because they were trying to remove bots from channels, but it's getting to the point where it's unsubscribing real people. So if you subscribe to me, please check and make sure that you are still subscribed to me, because YouTube may have unintentionally unsubscribed you from me. Also, my lovelies, if you want to help this channel grow, please give this video a like. Leave me a little comment. If you have not yet, slap that subscribe button like it owes you money. And don't forget to give that little notification bell a ring. And with that, my lovelies, this video is a wrap. Now, if you please, come with me as we dance into a world of magic.